Alrighty.
Lots of little tricks.
All right, let's give it up for the man who actually knows what he's talking about. Come on. Raise the roof, everyone.
Thank you for the hype. Okay, just to kind of dovetail from what he was talking about, some of you have been coming to OKC.js for a long time. So if you remember, I think back in 2013, I gave a talk on Impact.js, which is another good game framework. And if you want to build something with its world master, I wrote a tool for that, Impact Node World Master. But I also did a phaser talk 2 years ago. And so if you ever wanted to play with this thing, it exists. And then I also have a video that I gave up in Wichita on phaser. And if you are going to jump into phaser, it's really confusing if you should pick up phaser 2 or phaser CE or laser or all that stuff. Phaser CE is the one that you want. So anyways, if you want to do 2D game development, I would say that's pretty good. And there are people in this room that know more about it than I do, like that guy, Ben. Yeah. Yeah, if you don't know, Goldfire Studios here in Oklahoma City is one of the, I would say they were the first major HTML5 games company that there was. And so we have, there's a lot of experts in the city when it comes to 2D game development with JavaScript. So if you want to learn, you're in the right place, believe it or not. All right, so let me go ahead and get to Babylon. So periodically, I come out of my hovel of normal work, and I want to talk about something that is very fun and very interesting to me. So much like Aaron, I wanted to pick up the mantle of doing a little bit more game dev stuff this year. So I've been looking at Babylon.js, and the truth is I can't show you everything that it can do in 30 minutes. No one can. It's just too much. But I'll do my best to kind of give you a little bit of an overview and kind of show you what you can do with it and why you might consider it. So first of all, what even is Babylon.js? Well, it's a WebGL framework. It is a VR framework, so VR is kind of a first-class citizen for it. The thing that's really surprising is that it comes from, and I don't know how to put this, but Microsoft land. If you have been around C# and .NET people, they have their kind of like ecosystem they like to use, and this is in that ecosystem. So, just take that for what it is. The thing is probably most similar to that already exists in JavaScript is probably Three.js. It's a little different. I would say that generally speaking, it's like a higher abstraction, like it does a little bit more for you. Like all the things in it already have synthetic events, hooked up to it. Supposedly, it has slightly better performance than Three.js. This is not me doing rigorous benchmarking. This is going into the forums from, on like HTML5 game devs and them being like, I just made a game and let me tell you what, so take that for what it is. But I will say that Three.js is objectively more popular because it's been in existence quite a bit longer, right? So there's going to be more examples and stuff out there. If you're starting right now, I will make the case that I think Babylon.js is worth your attention, and you'll see why here in a bit. So if you're doing stuff in 3D, the hello world is like, make a plane, put a ball on it, right? I guess if you're an art major, the hello world is put a bird on it. So this is the equivalent for you. And this is your hello world for game devs. So basically, you make a Babylon scene, you make a camera, that's how we're looking at it. The free camera basically points it at the center of the scene automatically for you, which is nice. That's what camera set target does. Attach control is basically just going to allow you to fly around for free. That's like one of the little fancy abstractions that's already chilling for you. Put a light on it, put a sphere in there, and put the ground in there. That right there, everything inside a create scene is what makes that. The stuff at the bottom is more comparable to the request animation frame stuff that Aaron showed you earlier, right? You're going to go get the canvas, and you're basically going to say, okay, I'm going to turn on the Babylon engine, and then I'm going to run my render loop, and it's going to handle all the drawing and stuff for you. That makes a that. So that's cool. And if you want to see kind of a working example, Babylon, the ecosystem has a little playground where you can actually, it's like CodePen for Babylon stuff. You can go look at the code, and here it is running. You notice all that stuff that attaches it to the canvas and request animation frame isn't there. That's kind of like immaterial for the points of these sort of little demos, right? So there you go. All right, so this is how I personally feel. If you know where this comes from, then you know what the 2 steps are. How to draw an owl. Step 1 is you draw the circles, and the step 2 is you draw the rest of the you-know-what owl. Okay, I put a ball on a plane. Now what? Okay. Well, how about we just cover some things you're probably going to care about, but this is by no means an exhaustive list. So, lighting. Like, what even is there? Okay. Well, you want to go pick out the kind of light you want. You can pick from 4. You want to go put it in your scene, and then you want to configure the light. If you can just kind of remember those 3 steps, they're not so weird. That, and there's really 4 types of light you can pick from. You can have a light that is like, I put a point in space and it extrudes light in every direction. You can have a directional light, which is sort of like the sun is a directional light. It's just out there in space and it's shooting infinitely in one direction. A spotlight is exactly what you think it is. It's like a conical light with a source. Then a hemispheric it's like sort of like a half circle, right? So it's like I guess a super duper fat spotlight in a sense. Those are the things you get to pick from. Those are the things that exist in things like Unity 3D. So this is pretty much, if you've ever seen this stuff out there in the wild, this is kind of the same thing, right? And if you want to go play with it, there's examples of all of these, but here's just sort of an example of the code I showed you earlier. You know, I made a scene, I attached a camera, and then the important stuff is I made a light, and then over here I configured the light, and then we put a sphere on it just so you can see it, right? So speaking of light, that's like, okay, I can put lights in my scene. Well, there's a lot more to it. There's shadows. Everything that needs to cast a shadow, you need to basically register, and it will cast shadows for you. There's SSAO, which stands for Subsurface Ambient Occlusion. And if you've never heard this term before, how many of you, just by show of hands, play video games? Have you ever noticed that the SSAO button is the thing that makes it run a lot slower? Well, it's expensive. It's the thing. It's basically like if you look at shadows, they kind of like gather in corners and grooves and things like that. That is basically what that is. And I'll show you an example. And then there's volumetric light. So that's like, you know, the God rays and all that kind of stuff. Fancy lights, like I can look and I can see motes of dust in it. That's what that is. So here's a little example. I think I should be able to fly through this thing. Yep. Yay. It's harder without a mouse for me personally. So here's an example of every kind of shadow there is, and you can basically go look this up. Here is shadows, but with more sparkle magic, because sparkle magic makes it happy. You got like a little thing flying around, and so it can do dynamic shadows. This is really just to kind of demonstrate that it's a very competent game engine. Even this is just running in a browser. And then I mentioned kind of SSAO. Well, if you notice, like on this Cheshire cat, how like in his little, I don't know, cute little kitty tum-tum down here, there's like shadows sort of gathering, and his little grin, that's the SSAO right there. It makes things look a lot more realistic. And then finally, volumetric light, which, by the way, I'm just a little anecdote here. My daughter, who is slightly over 2, we had a Halloween decoration of a skull, which she thought was basically the coolest thing ever. It's not spooky to her. She thinks it's smiling. And so she ran in while I was working on this particular demo, and she like points to the screen. She's like, "Skull? Happy?" I'm like, "Yeah, man. It's a happy skull." And then I gave it and she's like, "Hat?" So that is basically the cutest thing ever. So if you play with volumetric light in this skull, it's not grim. It's a happy skull with a hat. Just throwing that out there. It even kind of looks a little Bob Ross-like if you get it in just the right light. Okay. Physics. Yeah, man, physics. I can fly around in the physics, and there's a lot of physics to pick from. So you're probably going to want those at some point. So you basically turn on a physics engine. There's a whole bunch of them. They're working on Energy.js, but there's basically Canon and Oymo. Canon is written in pure JS. Oymo is a port. So what do? Well, you got your Babylon scene. You turn on your gravity. You turn on your plugin, and then you enable physics. That is how you flip the physics switch. And then what do? Well, you basically add things called imposters to meshes. And the best way I can describe them is they are things that interact in the physics world that you attach to things that are the art, right? So like if you've ever played a video game and like it has like box collision, but your character is like actually a sprite, and like something seems to like bounce off of you a few like pixels in front of you, that's because there's a box collider on top of a piece of art. They call them imposters. If you've ever played in like Unity or something like that, you know, they'll attach capsule colliders to things. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And I will add that this whole community really seems to like TypeScript a lot. And if you've ever played in something like Unity, it's very reminiscent of Unity script. Okay, particles. I figured I'd just show you. A lot of people have never heard of particles. If you've made games, you have. Basically, particles are the sparkle magic of video games. They can be everything. Fires, like I'm shooting cards at you. Coins rain down. And it's easy just to kind of show you. Like I've got this little kind of interactive demo here where I can hit buttons and rotate my emitter, and my fans are turning on, finally. Okay, here we go. This is, I mean, to be fair, my fans are turning on. It is also making 200,000 particles. So, you know, there we go. Whee! So if you've ever played a video game and there's like fire or dust motes or anything like that, it's this stuff. And it's really not a lot of trouble to come in here and mess around with it and be like, oh, that's kind of the effect I want. Mix star fields, all kinds of cool stuff. Okay, so how do you make particles? Well, you make a container to put the particles in. This is like a box. Then you make a particle system. In this case, I'm calling it the particles. You attach it to some kind of sprite, which can be just like a little image, and then you put them together, and you can move your box around, and the particles will go with it. That's basically how that works. Okay, so lights, shadows, collisions, and physics, particles. I really can't go into too much depth in 30 minutes. Still though, it seems like it would take forever to make a game with all this stuff, right? Like even if you did it all by hand, code first. The truth is any modern game development shop has a lot of tooling under their belt to basically make this stuff go simpler. Visual editors, what have you, right? And your ability to have a good pipeline that uses all these tooling is basically what's going to make you efficient. You want to know what it's really doing under the hood, but then you don't want to landscape with the toothpick. And this is the reason why I feel like Babylon right now is a very compelling thing to consider. So I'll just kind of show you what some of this stuff is. So first of all, they have been very nice to us, and for every sort of like major 3D thing out there, they've made some kind of plugin that makes it easy to integrate with Babylon. With Babylon.js, there's like a .babylon file is what they have. It's basically JSON. It's JSON. I guess they didn't want to use Collada, which is XML. I don't blame them. So like if you're in 3ds Max, there's a Babylon Explorer. If you go into Blender, there's a Babylon.js add-on. Cheetah 3D, Maya, Unity, they all got them. So that's pretty cool. So you can go tell your artists to just work like they've always been working. They can export it into your stuff, and you're good to go. Okay? If you don't mind, I think that particle demo is still running back there in the background, so I'm just going to refresh this. It's like, hey, let me make 200,000 particles all at once. So a few of these I couldn't host inside of my actual presentation. So for these, like this one right here, I'm actually going to go just redirect to it. This is just a little material editor that someone made where you can come in here and you can like upload textures and stuff like that. You can do this code first. You know, I've done it. So you can go into your favorite material editor or find free materials on the web like Filter Forge, and you can just attach them. So like if I clicked texture and I drag an image on here, you'd see that image just chilling on that box right there. And you can come in here, and every quality there is to a mesh, you can go change them here. So I can disable that, and maybe I go to the color and I make it like red. I got a red box. Cool. All right. So there's that thing. There's a material editor. Obviously, I was playing with my Twitter profile image, which I didn't expect you all to have seen so far, right? So thanks, Aaron. It's a good image. I'm not complaining. If you want to get really fancy materials, there's PBR materials, which means physical-based rendering. Yeah, they look really nice. That's what you need to know. They're the good stuff. So yeah, there's this editor out here that this person made, and you can come in here and here's like a metal thing spinning around here, and you can like right click and make new nodes, and I'm not going to lie, like this one in particular, I'm not very good at using yet, but you could basically like draw lines in between. It's still loading in. It's a big one. But like you could basically make new nodes and like draw things, and like you can be like, I'm going to go add noise to this particular, to the specularity of it. And people who are really good at this sort of thing can make some very realistic looking stuff. So I'm going to close that guy. Then there is an actual scene editor that someone is working on as well. I've worked with it a little bit. It still has a little ways to go. Actually, what's really nice is this person has actually made a little bit of PBR stuff. So this is going to take a little while to load here. You can actually run this locally. Like you can go download this and make like an Electron app and just run it on your desktop, which is actually what I would recommend doing. But if you want to go look at it right now, it's editor.babylonjs.com. And these like kind of like weird black things shooting out the center of it, they don't do that when I run it locally. I don't know why it's doing that on the web. Yeah, that's weird. But if you look at this like metal ball right here, that's a good example of a PBR material. That's more or less like if I click test game, it's going to go actually make this scene for me. It only does that in the editor for whatever reason. But yeah, here I am. I'm looking around. You know, that's a physically based material there, physically based material there. That's not. That's just a normal one. Anyway. So, material editor, PBR editor, scene editor, already built by very nice people. And then, of course, the most important thing, I think, is the playground. And they went into this making the equivalent of a code pen. So you've seen this already. But what I didn't show you is you can come up here and you can click this guy. And here's an example of everything you'd ever want to do. So like here's instanced bones. And then there's an army of Xbox dudes just walking. They all do stuff. Sound on Mesh is funny. It's a box that floats around and plays symphonic music, but it's also kind of annoying, so I'm not going to play it. Okay. So why are you doing all this? Same reason I am. I want whiz-bang in my browser. Aaron, you want whiz-bang in your browser, right? Me too, dude. That's why I'm here. So, what can you do? Well, you can make a game. Here's a game. You know that. Make games all day long. Woo, fun. Okay. What else can you make? Graphs. Blow your manager's mind. By the way, I put this in here as a joke. I know some of you think I'm not joking, but this to me is like the epitome of useless 3D. Like, it's like, I know what we'll do. We'll give that manager a shiny graph. It's totally unreadable. That's your corporate something. I think it's absolutely silly. So maybe not all data needs to be 3D, but some data makes a lot of sense to be 3D, right? Like what if you're trying to look at a molecule or something that really doesn't make sense outside the context of three-dimensional space? So yeah, don't go make every line graph 3D, but you know, use with care. You can do product demos. This is not my product demo, but this is actually a relatively simple thing to do if you can get a hold of the mesh. All I'm doing is just rotating this thing whenever I say the person who made this demo, one who would make something like this. You just hover over these things and move the mesh around. Spicy. And then, of course, if they don't have canvas, you just show them a static image and images like normal, right? But come on, you want it to be extra spicy. Or you could, I guess, make whatever this is. You can manipulate her outfit. Be like, what would I look like if I was a low-res person with a swoosh shirt? Now you know. Make your little shirt designer. Or if you don't like manipulating her outfit, you can manipulate her face, which I'm not 100% sure why this exists. But here it is, fellas and ladies. So yeah, you can make more than just games. I thought this was a pretty compelling, I thought it was very beautiful looking, really. It's like an art gallery that someone made. And apparently the person who worked on this also made it in the scene editor that I showed you earlier, so that's pretty dope. And let's face it, we go to these WebGL talks so you can see some... By the way, if it seems like I'm walking around like a drunk person in this, it's because I don't know how to trackpad and play games at the same time. It's actually kind of hard to do. And by the way, for all these demos, you come up here. VR is a first-class citizen, so you can just be like, oh, what's the VR like? Boom, it's that. Now you're doing it in VR. So that's pretty cool. I'm gonna hit escape here. So that brings me to the end of my tale about Babylon.js. I did not expect someone to know it was my birthday today, so this was my final slide. I feel like this corgi, like, yay. OKC.js has been going for a long time. I think we're in our 6th year now. I've been writing JavaScript even longer, and I can't think of any place I'd rather be on my birthday morning than presenting this really cool stuff with the rest of y'all. So if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm @Simeon. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask anytime. Thanks, y'all. Oh.